Let's take a look at the latest build of EXA, the Infinite Instrument. This build has been all about usability, so let's run through all the new improvements. I've noticed lots of players struggling to use these ringers that are next to the menu interfaces here. So while they might be here trying to push on them or tap on them, this yellow ghost handle comes through and shows the correct interaction. And that works up here as well with the metronome. I've also noticed players pushing through the ringer like they're supposed to, but then pulling straight back out again. And what happens, just like with a drum, is it causes a double hit. So what I've done is added a 6 centimeter or so buffer on either side of the ringer so that if you do push through it, but don't push too far, you can come back out again without double hitting the ringer, causing, for example, the loop to stop or the recorder to stop. And if we go far enough, so we stopped it, come back through. But if we stop it here without going too far, coming back, it won't double hit. This is also useful where you might want to recoil your handle. In this case, you can see that it goes through the ringer twice, but because of that threshold, it only causes it to be hit one time. The metronome also has a new status icon that tells you whether or not you can hit it. So here it says ready to start, ready to stop. If we start one of these loops or start recording, we'll get a new message. In this case, it says locked by 1 loop or locked by 2+ loops. And what this means is that the loop or the loop recorder is depending on the metronome. We can't stop the metronome until we stop all the loops. And the metronome also resets to the first beat every time when you stop it now. The loop recorder itself also has some improvements. The yellow countdown indicator that appears while you're waiting for your recording to begin now flows in the same direction as all the other indicators do. And once you start the recording, if you don't hit any notes and make any events, when you stop it, it simply goes back to loop recording mode instead of making a useless empty loop and putting your loop recorder down 1 space. I've also noticed that players sometimes hit the playback once ringer on their way back through after finishing a loop. So what I've done is added a ½ second delay where immediately after these green playback ringers appear, for ½ second you won't be able to hit them. So let me show you what that looks like. You see, it took me a while before I could hit the once button. Let me just do it one time to show how that would look if I come through, come back out again. You'll also notice that these ringers now have a number 4 on them. What that represents is the number of beats that have been recorded, because I've noticed that occasionally it's hard for players to understand or see with the grid here that their recording might only be 7 beats instead of 8, and so it won't align with everything else. So you can see as you record, it tells you the number of notes. Then we have 16. I can't really show you this next feature, but the controllers in your hands now have haptic feedback, so you can feel it in your hands each time you hit a ringer. Now, the amount of haptic feedback varies based on how hard you hit the note. It feels pretty great to feel it in your hand each time your controller hits a string. And if you don't like that, or maybe you don't want to wear down the batteries in your controller, you can turn it off right here. Selecting multiple ringers is a very important part of EXA, but almost nobody knows how to do it. As an attempt to improve this and make this more discoverable, I've added these icons to the handles when you have the grab tool. When you see this icon, and you start to grab over here, you see that it lights up. And when you grab all the way, the box around it lights up, and you see the grab tool start to spin. And hopefully that's enough to tell you that you can do something like this. And eventually you can discover that you can simply swipe through them all. Now this icon goes away, as you can see, when you're close to things that can be grabbed directly. So if I get close to these ringers, as soon as I'm close enough to grab them and pick them up, the icon goes away. And when I pull back and I'm sort of out in the air, away from other grabbable things, the icon comes back. You can also multi-select with both hands at the same time. But it's important to remember that if you release your trigger on your controllers, the next time you touch a ringer, it's going to start your selection over. Or if you go up to a ringer and you grab it directly, it's going to remove your previous selection and only select the one that you've grabbed. It can be really frustrating for players to hit things that they can't see, especially when it messes up their performance or changes something about their instruments, changes their tools. So what I've done is disable the use of the menu items, the metronome, the loop tools, and the tool attachments when you're not looking at them. The best way I can show this is to hit the loop recorder box, and when I look away, I'm still doing that same motion. You can hear that it's not hitting it anymore. In the same way, the menu will only select when I look at it. And this row of tools, if I move in this straight line, you can see it selects them all. You can hear it, but if I only look at half of them, it only selects the ones that I can see. And I can try to do this if I move this close while I'm looking away, and when I come back, it snaps on. Now what this doesn't affect are the ringers themselves. So I'm doing this behind my back, or maybe reach over for the guitar. Another improvement is that the ringers next to the menu interfaces are blocked while you're holding on to an interface. That helps you from accidentally selecting the ringer while you're moving it around. Another feature related to grabbing is that it won't swap out your grab tool while you're holding on to something. This build also has some improvements when saving layouts. Here I'm going to add a layout called EXA with a photo. I'll save it. I'll go and see that now it's in our loading list. Now, if we go and try to make another one called EXA, we will get a pop-up that says this layout is already in use. All right. Some other changes with the Save Layout panel have to do with the camera. Whichever cursor selects the Add Photo button is now the cursor that receives the camera. And once the camera is on your handle, it prevents you from putting a different tool in its place.